Okay, so I'm going to try to save us a little bit of time on this one, hopefully, since I took up time in our last segment by taking us off the rails a little bit. But there was a really interesting article in The Guardian, and it talks about this guy, James Florence. He's 36 years old. He recently pled guilty to a 7-year cyber stalking campaign targeting a university professor that he knew, and then a couple other people as well. This guy's just not a good person.
Yeah.
But as AI became more and more of a thing, he started introducing AI chatbot elements. So there's very traditional cyber stalking in here that grows into AI-enabled cyber stalking over this 7-year period. And in the less sophisticated ways, it was traditional social media, and he was taking images of this person into something like Photoshop and making them look like they were doing sexually explicit stuff, or posing in the nude when they never had. All that is horrible, but it's something that is a known quantity, and we've been dealing with for a long time. But with the advent of systems like crushon.ai and janitor.ai, where you can create chatbots that are fairly unbound, he was able to seed the chatbots with aspects of the person that he was stalking's personality. He was able to put in her profession, have the simulated version of her going and talking to random people and entering sexually explicit conversations.
Jeez.
But then also fed her address into that, such that if somebody ever says, "Hey, I would really like to meet you," it would say, "Come over."
You're
and it
kidding
would give her
me.
address. No.
That sucks.
So this is like the almost an evolution of swatting, right?
Yeah.
Because swatting is like where you call the police and you say, something bad is happening at this house. And then all of a sudden, all these, SWAT team people show up at the house, and that's had really devastating
People have died.
Outcomes.
Yeah, people have died from those.
And now what somebody has figured out how to do is do that, but, make these really, really sexually tense people show up at your house and potentially do something bad.
That is grim. That is grim.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, this professor was getting sexually explicit texts. People were showing up at their house. They had to install a security system, and it just got worse and worse and worse. Now, the thing that I wondered about this, and I did a little bit more research, is with the agents that were created in crushon.ai and janitor, since people interact with those, they know that it's AI. So how did that really cross the boundaries? And I guess that the teasing nature of the AI chatbot was always kind of like hinting that there's something more behind the scenes. To the point where somebody would say hey, I would like to come over and meet you. And then, of course, the address and everything else is there.
Oh, so this was all happening so the interactions with the chatbot that was made to act as like this professor were happening on Crushon AI and Gender AI's platforms.
Yeah. That's my understanding. It's the reports that I found were murky, but I, like you, was wondering, was this person able to programmatically set up these chatbots to where they would interact like on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or something like, and technically you could do that, right? Even if they didn't have API access, you could build a shell around that would capture the outputs and just kind of, especially if you're working in text, you can, delays are something that would be easy to account for. So even if it was image grabs and screen scraping, you could do all that pretty easily programmatically. But we don't know if that's there. But I think that would be the next stage of something like this for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, if it was perpetrated by someone who was inclined to go that far, or someone who had on a nation state level, not for like a personal targeted harassment campaign like this, but for some kind of targeted harassment campaign, like the capabilities are there for extremely sophisticated automated harassment. And
and of course, when we talk about harassment, this could easily this was of a sexual nature, and that's the bent that the attacker had in this, or the bad actor had. because they even targeted a minor, and that was part of their, when they did their plea. They didn't plead out. They actually, pled guilty. So they're serving for this, which is really important to say. But there was a child victim as well, where they had, made that person look like they were nude before. And so possession of child pornography was part of this person's charges as well, on top of all the harassment charges and everything else. But this was sexual in nature. You could easily turn this and make this like cyberbullying, cyber extortion, to where all those images you're now holding over somebody's head and saying that we have this, or you could do other forms of stalking where it's always grabbing information about somebody, using that against them in different ways. The sky is the limit on this. And when you have persistent chatbots that are not confined to systems like Crush.ai or Janitor, the kind where both of our minds went, that opens up a ton of possibilities for any bad actor that's out there. And I think it's only going to get worse. And this is the first ripple in the water that we're seeing.
I think it's almost in some ways more concerning, or differently concerning, that it was on platform, that it was people interacting with these on this platform, and it's like they still took it that far. There's something extra scary, I guess, about people willing to believe whatever it is they believed interacting with these AI chatbots, that you'd think they would know I'm talking to a role-playing chatbot, and then they get a real address and
The chatbots, and we've seen this over and over and over again, even though like in our last segment, everything is just token generation, and it's math behind the scenes, right? It's math based on a neural network, but it's math that's driving the conversation. It still feels incredibly real whenever you've got the right prompts and the right information running behind the scenes. And I think that when you have people that are logging into Crush.ai or Crushon.ai or Janitor AI, you have people who are experiencing this loneliness epidemic, and they're looking for connection. You also have people who are potentially insular. I'm not calling necessarily all these people incels or something like that, but they're living a fairly solitary life to the point where some of their main friends and connections are not human anymore. And then all of a sudden that thing reaches out and says, I would like to connect on an even deeper level.
Yeah.
Well, now you have somebody who is like screaming internally for attention, and they believe that they can get that by driving to somebody's address.
Yeah.
And that maybe there's something broader and better than a computer interaction that's waiting for them.
That is so upsetting. And it's tough too, because like one of the things I was most excited about with the advent of LLMs was character chatbots in video games having like the ability to respond to natural language. Like that seems like something that could be so cool. And so far now there's been 2 huge stories of people being caused immense harm because of sites like this. And part of it is like Crush on AI specifically trying to create like erotic and romantic role play driven through AI, capitalizing on that uncarefully. Can be an issue, but it's also something where I can imagine a disproportionate legislative response that might not solve the problem and could get scapegoated too, like as the fallout from this. So like it just, I don't feel strongly that everyone here is going to get justice. I feel so bad for this professor.
Yeah. And, the guy that set this up was Office Rocker. I mean, he'd broken into her house and stolen some underwear and, done tons and tons of creepy stuff. But what we see is that anybody with an agenda and a little bit of curiosity to play with the technology right now, that's all it takes is motivation. Well, I guess it's all the police stuff, motivation and opportunity, right?
Yeah, means motive and opportunity.
Curiosity, a little bit of motivation, a little bit of time to invest in this. And the technology right now is just talking to a machine. You don't need a lot of tech experience. And even if you wanted to say, oh, let's automate this to the next level, let's do API access. Well, now we have all this no-code automation stuff like Zapier and Make.com and everything else that can string multiple systems together. And very non-technical people can wrap their minds around that fairly easily if they're motivated.
Yeah. And to clarify what I meant about like no people not actually getting justice, like the general understanding of AI is so poor and the reporting about it is so poor that like I don't think that the bodies in place that would be able to stop this kind of harassment have a good enough grasp on the situation to properly apply their power to stop this. And this kind of thing should be stopped, and we should be finding ways to make this unable to happen. Well, and actually, we might be getting into a potential solution for something like this in the next segment. All
right. Well, that's a good teaser and segue.
Hopefully. I mean, yeah, fingers crossed that this technology we're about to talk about can be helpful, but we'll talk about that in a second. Stick around.
Crossing fingers now.
This is the FAIK Files.